Leafs converts, hockey world, what is going on? This is the Leafs Convo podcast. My name is Norman James, your host. It is exceptional to be with you once again. For the next 20 to 30 minutes, or however long it lasts, we are going to get into some really good Leafs conversation with the one and only Mike Jello. On the docket, Martin Dzierkals. He's leaving North America for Russia. We'll talk about that. Plus Calvin Pickard. Will he be leaving the Maple Leafs organization via trade? Plus Morgan Rielly. Is he underappreciated or overrated? We're going to discuss all of those players and more. Plus, there's a call to action for you. I'm ready to go. I know Mike's ready to go. Are you ready to go? Whatever. It's time to pod. The Leafs conversation starts right now. And here he is, the one and only Mike Jello. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Norman. I'm fine. I just got back from my annual trip to New York City, so I drove 7 hours to see the Blue Jays play and see the Yankees properly annihilate them as they tend to do.
Nice word. Annihilate, eviscerate. Come on, Mike. Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that where the Yankees are and where the Blue Jays are? Isn't that just the way it goes? As opposed to annihilate?
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, hey, the Blue Jays are in a rebuilding position right now. The Yankees are, they're probably not going to catch the Red Sox, and they're going to finish in the wild card, and that's the place. But I mean, Blue Jays fans have a reason to be excited in terms of the future. And like I said, I talked about Vladimir Guerrero in the past, and I think you're going to see, a guy like Danny Jansen, who's their catcher of the future. There's a reason to be optimistic, but right now the Yankees, even with their injuries, are a really tough club to beat, and they laid a whooping on the Blue Jays in New York this weekend.
If the Yankees beat the Red Sox, the Yankees officially become my second favorite team, and I never have a hierarchy with sports clubs. It's always one club, and that's it, but I will gladly slot the Yankees into number 2 among MLB teams after the Blue Jays if they can beat the Boston Red Sox, and they should. By the way, Danny Jansen, tell me, with those shades on, does not look like Brett Cecil.
Somebody was comparing him to Chris Sabo, and I remember Chris Sabo from the Cincinnati Reds. He had those wraparound glasses, and I was like, yeah. It just looks like that. But you know what? They read some statistics off about him. It says ever since he put those glasses on, he's hitting over 300. So, hey, whatever works.
I just got glasses myself within the past week, and I'm telling you right now, everything is illuminated. I love it so much. By the way, annihilate, eviscerate. Should we cut some clips out of our podcast and have Mike Jello eviscerates Jake Gardiner? Put that out on YouTube. Put that out on
Pulverize. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, some big days ahead for you, my friend. You're obviously not going to the rookie tournament because it's in Laval, but training camp will start the 13th of September at the Gale Center in beautiful Niagara Falls, Ontario, and you must be champing at the bit.
Well, it's traditionally, and I think they're sticking with this. They're going to hold the first weekend at the Gale Center in Niagara Falls, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But I think they're going to open as they usually do at the MasterCard Center, and do their pre-camp media availability. Kyle Dubas will do his State of the Leafs press conference, and Babcock as well. So things will get kicked off. But as you can see from some of the reporters, and I'll be going up there as well at some point over the next couple of weeks. Some of the Leaf players are already skating at MasterCard Center, trying to sort of get a jump start on training camp. And I mean, that's going to be a key thing for a number of players, because there are some battles for fourth line positions, for bottom pairing defense, for the backup goaltender situation. And, getting a good quick start is going to be a big thing for some of these players.
Well, I can tell that you want to go into the Calvin Pickard rumors, information that's being put out there. But I wanted to mention that I really do think that having the training camp at the Gale Center in Niagara Falls comes down to Kyle Dubas being old enough now to go to the casino. And those Falls View ads that run in Ontario, God love them, but they're somewhat annoying.
Yes,
have gotten to him, and it's a double whammy in mid-September.
Yeah. I'll continue to say they're annoying until they're an advertiser for our podcast, and then I'll say they're fantastic.
No question. Was it James Myrtle put out something on Twitter?
Yes.
Relating to Calvin Pickard being shopped, Mike. Give us the details on that, and why we should even give a second of thought to whether Calvin Pickard is kept or dealt.
Well, the situation is that, Freddie Anderson played, I think, way too many games last year. I think anybody who saw what happened in the playoffs last year and in the last 5 weeks of the regular season, where his goals against went over 3, his save percentage went under 900, and at times he looked tired in the postseason, and times he looked really good. But I think that the want of the organization is to have a backup who can play more games, and based on what Curtis McElhinney did last year, I mean, I think he had the best statistics of any backup goaltender. Save percentage was save percentage was 934. Goals against was 2.14. He probably could play a few more games, but there are some people who believe that Garrett Sparks may fit in as a backup. I think Mike Babcock, there's a trust level when it comes to Curtis McElhinney, and Curtis McElhinney is going to end up being the backup again. And if that happens, there's a problem, because all their goaltenders, McElhinney, Sparks, and Pickard, all have to clear waivers. And I don't think there's a chance that Garrett Sparks is going to clear waivers after winning a Calder Cup, after winning the AHL version of the Vezina Trophy. He's not going to clear waivers. So there's one of two things here. It's either they're going to keep 3 goaltenders and hope that the 4th goaltender clears waivers. So that means keeping Sparks on the NHL roster, which I don't think ever works. Having a 3rd goalie there basically practicing all the time, it's not good for his development. So either you're going to keep 3 goaltenders, or you're going to trade one of them and hope that the other one gets through waivers and goes down to the AHL. And if both of them get claimed, or one of them gets traded and one of them gets claimed, then Kazimir Kaskasuo is your starting goaltender for the Marlies. But I mean, I think this is something that many people thought was going to be rectified early in July, and one of the goaltenders would be traded. That ended up not happening. And what James Myrtle reported in The Athletic is that they're, shopping around Pickard. They're not going to get much for any of them, but I think it's who you think is going to be the best goaltender going forward. But I also think that it's going to be who Babcock trusts the most. So if I had to guess who the backup goaltender is going to be at the beginning of October when the regular season starts, I think it's going to be McElhinney, but that's why they have a training camp in preseason.
Careful, Mike. You're about to start a war between fans and Mike Babcock, because the coach, he's not allowed to trust guys that he trusts. It's who the fans want. So you're going to have the faction crying and whining about Garrett Sparks not being given the backup role, or Calvin Pickard not being given the backup role. Now Curtis McElhinney's too old because, again, you're not allowed to age. So just be careful how far you dial this conversation up, my friend, because it's going to be essentially much ado about nothing when it comes to who the backup is for Freddie Anderson, yet we will make a mountain out of a molehill. My real concern here is the career of Garrett Sparks, because I just don't see him being the number 1 in Toronto, and he's played to a level of being given some sort of chance to make a statement somewhere. And I wish we could have seen him traded to a team where he could have gotten that chance. Now he's going to be a part of this goalie shuffle with the Maple Leafs. And we'll just have to see how it all plays out. But somebody's going to get to camp and do well. And Mike Babcock has his guy. And therein lies a new conflict that fans will gin up in their own minds over who's not being given an opportunity because of the oppressive coach. And it's not just going to happen with the goaltending situation. Someone's going to make a statement in preseason and eventually, end up with the Marlies or somewhere else, and the coach will be to blame for it. This is the Leafs Convo. I'm Norman James, along with Mike Augello. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast and all of the content we produce throughout the summer months. I was telling Mike last night in our conversation, I actually find a use for Facebook Messenger. I could care less about Facebook, but Facebook Messenger is really good. I have a friend, and he's with the Navy and U.S. Navy in Japan, and he and I talk all the time, and pre-Facebook Messenger, we wouldn't be able to have these discussions. However, we're basically tabulating how deep the news goes for the Maple Leafs throughout a year. And we came to the conclusion that for 11 months, there's just Leaf news ripe for the picking, with the month of August becoming a little bit difficult to establish or to really sink your teeth into any concrete information. However, September's just around the corner, and we're doing our best to stay relevant. And we appreciate you helping us stay in that mold by supporting our podcast, whether it be on YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. Martin Dzierkals, here's a guy that you had ranked in the 20s among your prospect rankings that you put out every year, Mike. And he's headed to the KHL. Should we be upset about this, or should we just think to ourselves, here's a young guy who sees that he's not going to get too much of a chance with this organization to elevate his own status, so he's going to go try it in Russia, and who knows, maybe down the line there's a partnership between the Leafs and this player, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, I mean, it's a situation where, Dzierkals was a 2015 draft pick. He played 2 years in junior, played for Latvia in the World Junior. I've always been impressed with his speed. He's, he's not the biggest player, but he's, I think, speedy, creative. He's got an offensive upside. But with the backlog of wingers that the Leafs had with the Marlies and, consequently with the Leafs, Dzierkals had to start and play most of the season with the Orlando Solar Bears of the ECHL. Now that franchise, the affiliation with the Leafs is moved to St. John's. He didn't get an NHL entry-level deal. The Leafs are up against it in terms of entry-level contracts. They have 47 right now, and that's not including William Nylander. So, this might be a situation where, similar to Emily Rassinen, their second-round pick from a couple years ago, where they signed off on him going to the KHL for a year. Now, from what I understand, his rights remain with the Leafs until the end of the 2018-19 season. I haven't been able to confirm that, but based on the parameters of other draft picks who have gone to the KHL or played in the KHL, that seems to be consistent. And if that's the case, the KHL season ends usually in March or April, unless a team goes to the finals. That would be before the end of the contractual year in the NHL. So they would have an opportunity to sign Dzierkals to an ELC after the KHL season. That's a question of, if he does well there, then I'm sure they're going to be interested. But I mean, the benefit here is, instead of playing in St. John's, he's going to play at home for Dynamo Riga, and maybe he flourishes there. And if he does that, then maybe they sign him to a deal.
This is what we talk about in August: Calvin Pickard and Martin Dzierkals. God love them, but the business of an organization and the comings and goings of its players continue on 12 months of year, even if it's not overly interesting. But again, the forming of a team is important, and some of these subtle moves, these lesser moves, right now might seem like they're not a big deal, but they can give the organization headaches. And I've always said, look, the whole point here is to do what you have to do every single day of the year to build a Stanley Cup champion. And for a team like the Maple Leafs that is expected to be a 100-point club when all is said and done, perhaps challenging for the Atlantic, perhaps challenging for the East, these kinds of moves actually do have ramifications, and there are derivative effects to everything that go on. So while I do poke fun at them, and that's what I am, I'm a sarcastic guy, and I think some people who listen to us don't get sarcasm or are just way too serious. While I do poke fun at some of these things because they do seem menial. They do have an impact, or they do relate to other things that the organization wants to do. I want to get to this thing that I found on Twitter from the NHL Network. I don't know if you saw this, Mike. Mm-hmm. NHL Network a day ago tweeted out, "Start your morning with a good old debate. Hashtag NHL top players. Top 20 wingers. Top 20 wings," which is a stupid title, because you're thinking top 20 wings. Well, okay, Gordie Howe, Nick Lidstrom, and then you look at it, they mean wingers. So I don't know if you saw this, but I guess fans voted. Have you seen this?
I saw it, and I glanced at it briefly.
Oh, God. I have to go through it real quick before we go, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Morgan Rielly. Which one do you want to do first?
Well, let's just, because we'll be brief on it. The one thing I saw from that And I criticized when they put out the top 20 centers. They had Austin Matthews further down than I had expected. Plus, they had Jonathan Taves not even in the top 20 after one bad year. So I don't know if that was a fan poll or if that was a based on writers from NHL.com or what. All I know is that I thought it was a bit inaccurate. And in this one, William Nylander is not even on the list. Mitch Marner, I think, was in the teens.
What is this?
Yeah, so
Mitch Marner's not a part of the fan one.
Oh, okay.
Mike Johnson put one out too, and this is what the NHL Network does. They pander to everybody, and they do more to reel in fans of other teams than they would do to endear themselves or strengthen their relationship with Maple Leaf fans. I think they go out of their way to objectify or lessen the importance of the Maple Leafs, because that way they're signaling to the entire body of hockey viewership that this isn't the Leafs network. And to a degree, I understand that, but to have something like this put out by Mike Johnson, and I'm not even going to bring up the fact he is a former Leaf. I don't know, is he a Toronto kid too? Who knows? But for him to come out and have Mitch Marner ranked 17th behind Johnny Gaudreau, like I don't want to use the F word, Mike, because we'll have one Bible thumper call up and tell us that we're vulgar. Like Johnny Gaudreau is ahead of Mitch Marner, and then the fan poll is just a complete disaster. What does the fan poll here have?
I have less of a problem of Johnny Gaudreau being slightly ahead of Mitch Marner, because Johnny Gaudreau has, I believe, put up 3 really good years compared to Mitch Marner's too.
Yeah, I know.
But there are other ones, and I'm not looking at the list. And frankly, I'm not going to waste my time looking at the list of other players who are listed. I'm trying not to be parochial, trying not to be a homer here, but I do think that Marner is probably in the top, at least in the top 15 of wingers in the league, and you're taking both left and right wingers into account here. And I think Nylander is slightly below that, but what I have to say is, if both of them have big years, they're going to definitely be in the top 20. And the whole situation with their contractual situations, let's just say we'll be talking about that probably every other convo from now until next July.
Look, Chris Davis just hit a home run for the Oakland A's last night. He's 30. He's got 2 or 3 40 home run seasons, more 40 home run seasons than Aaron Judge. So is Chris Davis ranked higher than Aaron Judge? Again, it's not so much what you've done, it's what you're expected to do. And I know with fan polls, like, to not even have William Nylander in here or Mitch Marner, like, what is this? It's a complete joke. This is why I wouldn't watch the NHL Network, because it's not appealing to me. And it's the same reason I wouldn't watch the MLB Network, because the MLB Network its target audience is white guy, suburban guy from the Midwestern part of the United States. There's no Blue Jay stuff in there, or it's Yankee fan versus Red Sox fans. For me, it just doesn't appeal to me. So with the NHL Network as well, I'm looking at this thinking to myself, well, if the fans voted, clearly there are no Leaf fans watching. And that's probably the reason why they don't really try to target Leaf fans. But hey, the Leafs have their own Leafs Nation network, and pretty much every other network that covers hockey is just all about the Maple Leafs. But anyway, I don't know. Tweet us what you think of this top 20 wings list. That's just not even a good title for it. And Mike Johnson, I still love that guy. I still think he's a fantastic analyst. Morgan Rielly. We've had some comments about Morgan Rielly, whether on the YouTube page or on Twitter. Most of them positive, but some people wanting to implicate him in the troubles that the Leafs defense would cause over the past few seasons and are expected to cause in the season ahead. Well, Jake Gardiner gets all of the shit from fans. Of course, Morgan Rielly gets out unscathed again. And I would answer that with, well, Morgan Rielly's one of those guys who goes about his business so stealth-like and so quietly and is so efficient and is so productive. We don't really talk about him, and add that to the fact that Jake Gardiner is such a lightning rod of polarization that Morgan Rielly is just part of the furniture. And he's kind of one of those guys that you just want to have. Now we start looking at his teammates and the other players who we're expecting to contribute in the same steady way, and they don't. Mike, I mean, what's your take on Morgan Rielly and his impact to the Leafs' defensive situation and the team as a whole?
Well, I mean, I think Morgan Rielly is definitely the only legitimate top pairing defenseman the organization has right now. They may use Ron Hainsey as a top pairing guy. He's not a top pairing guy. They may put Jake Gardiner in situations like that, but he cannot handle it because he's, a defenseman who is a one zone player. And whereas I think Rielly is more of a two-zone guy. He's not perfect defensively. He's not a plus defender, but he's a good defender. And I think the first year under Babcock, where he had him killing penalties and concentrating on his defensive game, was definitely beneficial to his long-term maturization as a top defenseman. Now they got him on a great contract. He had a great offensive year last year. He was used on the power play. He scored 52 points. I think the only problem with Morgan Rielly is because of the lack of depth and the problems of the Leafs defense. He has to be used in situations as a shutdown guy, which, with other teams, if they have other defensemen who could fill that role, he wouldn't be in that situation. He would be concentrating more on carrying the puck and creating offense rather than checking the other team's top line. So for the people out there who criticize Morgan Rielly, I think that the reason that there is any kind of criticism is because of the Leafs not using him correctly for the type of defenseman he is.
Okay, wait a minute. Mike, are the Leafs using Jake Gardiner correctly? Is Jake Gardiner
no.
Okay, go on, make that point.
Jake Gardiner would be perfect as a specialist. He's a top 4 defenseman on the Leafs. He will probably be a top 4 defenseman if he's on the Leafs or another team next season after the upcoming year, because he's an unrestricted free agent. That doesn't mean that he's a good fit as a top 4 defenseman, because defensively, I think he is what he is. He's like Mike Green. Mike Green has played a top 4 role in Washington, but defensively, he's not very good. There are defensemen out there, like Erik Karlsson. He's a Norris Trophy winner. He's not a Norris Trophy winner because of his defense. He's a Norris Trophy winner because of his offense. And I'm not saying Jake Gardiner will ever be a Norris Trophy winner, but the only reason he's going to play in the top 4 for probably the next 5 or 6 years is because offensively, he can carry the puck and he can help generate offense. But Morgan Rielly is more of a two-way defender than those guys. And I think that's to his benefit and to the Leafs' benefit. And the fact that they have him under contract for another 4 years at $5 million is a big benefit to them. But I think if their defense was a little stronger, he could be put in better situations, probably could score more points. But I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Listen, Leafs fans, don't implicate Morgan Rielly in Jake Gardiner's hemisphere of shit. Do you watch Trailer Park Boys, Mike?
I do not.
You're missing out. That's a quote from the late John Dunsworth, Jim Leahy, hemisphere of shit. Ricky, Mike, you know what? One of these days, you're just gonna have to settle in, watch some Trailer Park Boys.
Okay.
And it's one of the most genius shows ever. It's vulgar. But it's vulgar because it's just over the top and it's so funny, and it's set in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. It's just beautiful. But it's hard. It's like, isn't the point here, and we just keep making it, yet supporters of Jake Gardiner will skirt it over and over and over again. That, look, the guy's going to be a free agent after this coming season. There's money that he is going to be expecting to make. It's money that the Maple Leafs may not be able to pay, even if they could. Why would they want to pay a guy with that skill type when they have 2 or 3 players with the same skill type coming up
who are more controllable and who will make less. Why can't that point just be understood? That this guy leaves a lot to be desired. He gives a lot, but in terms of the player you're looking for and what this cat's going to be looking for and what you're up against with him contractually, it might make better sense to try to ship him. And I think now we're entering the season. I'm not so sure a deal for him anytime past October, November would be viable.
Yeah, I spoke and had Kevin Allen on a recent Hockey Buzzcast, and we sort of have a friendly wager now about Jake Gardiner, about whether he'll be traded. And his comment was, if the Leafs are in the race, if they're, locked into a playoff spot and considered a contender going down the stretch, that there's no way that they're going to trade Jake Gardiner. And I made the bet, but he probably is right. And that's why if they do trade him, it's probably going to be before the season. But if they do go out and with the cap room that they're going to have for this year only, they might simply go out and trade for a defenseman, take a run for it, and let Jake Gardiner walk. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they did that with Van Riemsdyk and Bozak. But they probably feel that they'll have a guy like Timothy Liljegren move in, next season, or some other defenseman in the organization, or maybe they go in free agency. I don't know, but that may be the thought process. But I just don't see the Leafs signing Jake Gardiner to a contract sort of akin to the Ryan Ellis deal, which was 8 years at $6.25 million. I don't think they'll do that, and I think this is the last year, one way or the other.
Yeah,
you'll see Jake Gardiner in a Leaf year.
What I love about our subscribers, we're almost at 1,300 now. Thank you so much for that. We started at 0 in April, so we've come a long way. What I love, Mike, about the people who interact with us, especially on YouTube, is that the conversation, for the most part, is a concrete one. It's a constructive one, and it flows. There's a respect among most of our subscribers, and when you have someone who has an objection to some of the things we say, or they want to build off of a topic that you and I have broached or gotten in depth with, then you have other people jumping on it and wanting to add their 2 cents. So what I'm asking our listeners to do now is give us your defensive unit for the Leafs going forward. Who do you like? How would you situate the defense? Forget what Mike Babcock wants, and even if you can think of a deal that you're hoping Mike or Kyle Dubas could make, or if you want to dream something up. Obviously, you can't get Drew Doughty and bring back Nick Lidstrom, but how would you configure the Leafs defense for the season ahead? How would you start the season? And give us your scenarios, give us your thoughts, and that's what I'd love to see. And I'll jump in on the discussion, and Mike, hopefully you can get over to the YouTube page and check out some of the comments, because I really feel like our listeners are just. They're so smart. They're so into what's going on. They understand what we're doing so well, and I feed off of a lot of their input and a lot of their feedback, and I think that's what makes this the symbiotic relationship that we have right now, us and those who support us, so strong and getting stronger every day. Last word to you, Mike. Then we got to go.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say about, and we'll discuss this on future combos, is I still think there's a move, and not a move where they're going to get somebody in the top 4, because I think that is not going to happen one way or the other until American Thanksgiving. I do think that there's the possibility, because right now we're in PTO time, where Mark Letestu gets signed to a PTO by Florida. Scotty Upshaw gets an invite from Edmonton. I think you could see the Leafs invite a guy like a Kevin Bieksa, like a Toby Enstrom. Maybe Enstrom would need a 1-year deal, but I think they may go that way, because the bottom pairing right now is Travis Dermott and Connor Carrick. And Connor Carrick, the last couple seasons, has been in and out of the lineup, because I'm not sure how much there's buy-in from Mike Babcock on Connor Carrick. And I do think that they're going to need, there's not a lot of snarl and pushback on this roster, and a guy like Bieksa, who does that very well, even though he's 37 years old and slowing down. I think that they need that sort of veteran safety net. So you could see a veteran being added on a PTO and compete for a job at training camp.
You also have to be careful how many geriatrics you have back there at this point, because you still need some young superstars in the making to carry the day. With that said, if the Leafs could land Calle Johansson, Jyrke Lumme, Aki Berg, and Phil Housley by sometime late September, I'll be happy.
Yeah, Calle Johansson, didn't he play about 2 games with the league? And Phil Housley played 1 regular season game and I think 1 or 2 playoff games when he.
Yeah. What was Calle Johansson's Matt Sundin's valet? The same way Ricard Valin was.
Ricard Valin was the valet for Jonas Gustafsson, because they played on the same team in the SHL.
What's the monster up to these days? Where's he playing?
I don't know. I mean, I know that he might be back in the SHL again. Either that or the KHL. I'd have to look that up, but I've lost track of the monster.
Remember the hype around the speculation over where he would go, and then the hype around his arrival. He just seemed like such a sympathetic figure, and I really, really liked him. I was really rooting for him, but I think he was in his own head.
Yeah, according to Elite Prospects, last year he played with Linkoping of the SHL and played 36 games, and he's with them again this year. So he's made the full circle. He started in the SHL, and now he's back in the SHL.
We kind of poke fun at some of these guys whose careers fizzled out, but if they were smart with their money, they're laughing all the way to the bank, and we're still trying to make ends meet. So whatever. Anyway, have a good one, Mike.
Thanks, Norman.
That's a wrap for this edition of the Leafs Convo podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget, you can add us on Twitter at Mike and Buffalo, at I Am Sportsheart, at the Leafs Convo. If you have a question for our next mailbag edition, hashtag Ask Mike on Twitter, or hashtag capital letters Ask Mike in the YouTube comment section of our YouTube page. Have you subscribed to that page yet? If you haven't, why not? You keep listening to us, so just go ahead and do it. That way, you'll be able to be kept abreast of everything that's going on with the podcast, because if you think right now this is all the content, commentary, and conversation you're going to get from us, you're kidding yourself. We are in the dog days of summer, but once September rolls around, once we get into rookie camp, once we get into the preseason, once we get into the